Hello everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having an absolutely fantastic day. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. As might be expected, is that a sentence? I just woke up. I'm doing one of those things where, like, have you ever woken up and like you can't still like really see out of your eyes yet, but you're like, I got this, and you kind of like walk into stuff? That's where I currently am. A lot of the news, of course, today, as many other days, is revolving around the direction that the cryptocurrency market is going to be flowing in. The excitement around the Ethereum ETFs, Bitcoin moving up and down and then back up again in price, and where altcoins could go is obviously still a major discussion that people are having based off of the reactions of the market over the course of the last 3 months and some change. In the news today is Anthony Scaramucci, once again, who has predicted that Bitcoin is going to hit $100,000 by the end of this year, fueled by key market dynamics and fundamental strengths. One of the major things floating around, and I never know if this is actual mental consensus, if this is what all the charts are saying, because you know how I feel about charts, and I've been saying that for years. And then people mocked me a couple of months ago, and I was like, where are your charts now? Because the charts never, I think there's far too many divergences and too many different metrics that people are using, especially when a lot of people don't pay attention to like macroeconomic trends and things happening in the world and things happening with other economies. It kind of leads us typically down a very weird path. Bitcoin's fundamentals have not really changed or diverted. Bitcoin has been strong for a number of years, and even the creation of Bitcoin ETFs did not really change that. You have to understand that at its core, Bitcoin is a market that for the better half of 15 years has not had any downtime. It has not had any, I was going to say slow down time, but Bitcoin's inherently slow. It transfers trillions of dollars worth of value through its chain every single month. It is used by, it is estimated, tens of hundreds of millions of people around the world. Bitcoin is incredibly strong and incredibly stable. Whenever we continuously get news, and it's very difficult because I only have a platform, I don't have CNBC level viewership. Whenever we have a situation where someone is lying about Bitcoin or saying this is happening because of this or that is happening because of that, my voice only goes so far. So when we hear how terrible and scary everything happening with Mt. Gox is, me telling you it's not scary, it's not horrible, it's not any of those things, because we know that there are people behind the scenes who are buying up these coins from the people who are receiving them back. Once again, it only makes it so far because, fear sells. So you have to be able to terrify other people. And that's the way that other YouTubers and other people on Twitter have gotten their voices to be heard, by basically telling people this thing that you knew was going to happen over the course of the last 10 years is finally happening. Now you should be afraid. There was so much news. And I mean, I'll say it this way. Those people should be absolutely ashamed with themselves, but maybe they also didn't know. Maybe they also just don't have a brain and don't understand market dynamics. When we heard the entire thing, the first thing that happened, for those of you who have forgotten, was that the U.S. was moving Bitcoin. The rumors were that the U.S., I think, had moved around 1,000 Bitcoin. And it was, are they going to sell off their coins? It's theirs. They're going to move it around as they see fit. And then the news became that the German government was selling off their coins. And I remember writing on Twitter and being like, hey, you know that thing called fear? You should stop it because it's not really necessary because A, if they're selling off their coins now, it means they don't have to do it later. Would you rather them sell off their Bitcoin when it's at 50,000 something dollars or when Bitcoin gets to $1.7 million a coin and then they really wreak havoc on the market? Also, I'd rather the governments have zero Bitcoin and those coins be redistributed amongst the masses who Bitcoin is for, but that's another topic entirely. So once again, instead of everyone being told to look at metrics, market metrics, the accumulation of, and I dare even say, securitized versions of Bitcoin through the ETFs, every single day. Once again, my voice only travels so far through space. Every single day that we saw any type of sell-off of any kind, there was one day, I think, and I air quote here, the German government, because people keep pretending it's some like massive evil organization sitting inside of a castle who's like, hit the sell button now. At some point, they let go of, I think, oh gosh, what was it? I think like 700 Bitcoin or something like that. Everyone fell into a panic. People were on the floor, rolling around. Everyone's crying. And I think a couple of hours later, we had news that the ETFs collectively for that day had purchased around 836 Bitcoin. And I was like, hey, look, see the thing that you were all, wait, oh no, everyone's still afraid, even though the other number's higher. So every time that there was a sell off or coins moved or something scary happened, it looks like, now hear me out here, it looks like those coins were actually bought up over and over. There's even that person on, I don't know what the person's name is, but people follow his wallet address called Mr. 100. And one of the days where I think around 7 or 800 coins had been sold onto the market, I think that one wallet alone for Mr. 100 bought 700 coins. So anywho, now we've gotten to the point back where market fall, not so scary, everything looking up. ETF approvals sounds absolutely fantastic. So people are now back on track because you can only scare people for so long. That was a very big theme for those of you who don't remember. Back in good old 2020 and 2021, I told you all that constantly. I forgot what the market fear was back then. It was even besides Coco Roro. There was something else that was going on in the market, and everyone was constantly afraid. And I was like, this will pass in about 2 to 3 weeks because the human mind can only be scared for so long before it forgets the fear and ends up moving ahead. In a recent interview, Anthony Scaramucci, the founder of Skybridge Capital, asserted that Bitcoin is set to achieve unprecedented all-time highs within the next 6 months. According to Scaramucci, the temporary correction Bitcoin is currently undergoing is influenced by various factors, including the Mt. Gox crypto exchange revolving matters with their creditors and the German government's coin sales. Both of these are a non-factor, but sure, let's keep pumping that fear into the market. Scaramucci emphasized that despite these temporary downturns, the long-term fundamentals of Bitcoin remain robust. He said, "We still love the fundamentals of Bitcoin long-term, and I do think it'll be $170,000 post-halving. But I think you can get to $100,000 by year end." This seems to be the new trend. Everyone has shuffled on back a tiny, gigantic smidge when it comes to their numbers. People are still similar to March, calling for a $100,000 Bitcoin. I'm seeing still a couple of 120,000s. A lot of people, the multitude of charts that I'm seeing on Twitter are now indicating a $100,000 to a $120,000 Bitcoin by around October or November. That's, I mean, as far as I can tell from the lines and all the colors and the bouncing up and down and stuff like that. And then we're still getting predictions of a 150 to a $200,000 Bitcoin sometime by next year. I think these numbers have become more conservative than the $300, $400, $500, $700,000 Bitcoin that we saw before because of the pullbacks that we saw over the course of the last, 3 months. I have a prediction that when we get over 100,000, those predictions are going to start ripping and roaring all over again. And we're going to start seeing people saying that by next summer, we will have a $500,000 Bitcoin once again. Yeah, the optimism is still there. It has not waned. I don't really know what else to say on this topic other than this happens every single cycle. It happens all the time. Whenever there's any type of a movement downward, people completely panic. But it's mainly because a lot of the people in the market, especially as we see influxes of brand new people, tend to have only entered the market at the end of the last cycle. So we see people, and we're going to see the exact same thing again. As the market's pumping and the prices are going up, a whole bunch of new people rush into the market trying to make the riches that they've seen other people making on TV. They enter to the market goes up by 10% and continuously falls over the course of a 2-year period. They remain in the market, they get other new friends into the market, and the prices end up going slowly back up. And these people have been in the market for about 3 to 4 years. Their new friends get into the market, and it's just this loop that continues over and over. So a lot of new people. This is why I know, maybe 15 of you are actually listening. When I say do your own research and learn, I can give you as much news as I possibly can or as much information and history about things, but it also sticks in your head far more if you learn about it as well. So I'll continue on my journey of trying to get people to learn more about the space so that they enrich their own mind, because a lot of the things that people keep saying are scary are not actually scary. And even when it comes to selling pressure on the market, our market can absorb it really, really well. But also that doesn't sell. You need more fear and panic in the market to make sure that new people drop their coin so that the larger institutions can scoop them up at a very low price. And then everyone looks at them years later and goes, wow, how'd they get those coins so cheap? You know how. That's the Anthony Scaramucci and a bunch of other people are talking about that Bitcoin is headed to 6 figures. And yeah. Let's move on. So this is one of those, I didn't think this would be popular, but I guess that's the world that we live in now. Shiba Inu's lead developer, Satoshi Kusama, has hinted at stepping down to follow the founder's path, aiming for a decentralized and leaderless ecosystem. Years ago, one of the main ideas within crypto was to kind of be like Satoshi Nakamoto. You basically would release a coin and then you would step away from the project so that it could exist on its own. But people become incredibly greedy and the idea of decentralization means absolutely nothing to them. So what a lot of these projects did is the leaders, the creators stayed around. And then the other portion of that is that they ended up being investigated by the SEC. In order to have true decentralization, you have to have the creators of the project step away so that there's no real, if you will, head of the dragon that everyone continuously follows back and forth as it moves its head. If it says something, everyone follows. If it doesn't say anything, people get depressed and upset online. And that's part of the reason for the success of Bitcoin. There's no one who explicitly, if you will, controls it. That's why a number of years we saw the creator of Litecoin also leave the project. For those of you who didn't see the video that I made about 6 or 7 months ago when Litecoin was getting back in the news, the issue is that, what's his name? It's not Jim Lee. Tom Lee? Charlie Lee. I was thinking of a comic book illustrator. Charlie Lee, years ago, whenever sometimes he would wake up and he'd be having a bad sleep. He would write on Twitter, didn't sleep too well, and Litecoin's price would fall. There were other times where he would go, I'm going to have a great day. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go for a jog. And Litecoin's price would go up by 7 or 8%. So he came forward one day and was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep having this much influence on the price. And that made a lot of people, I remember it made a lot of people very upset because they thought he was abandoning the project. And he said, no, the project needs to float on its own. It needs to be able to, like, I can't stay with this project for the next 120 years. It has to simply exist by itself. And this is what a lot of other projects also promised in the earlier days, that they would also do the exact same thing. But the, what do you call it? The allure is a great word. The allure of being a CEO, a CTO, a CFO, a COO of a company that created a coin that's worth billions of dollars is far too strong to leave. We even had, years ago, for those of, this was 2018, 2019, Vitalik Buterin also said at some point he would have to leave the project, and logically. You have to step away from it and let, like, developers around the world collectively take care of it. And I think Ethereum's price fell by like 10 or 15% that day. Like, people were also very angry because, once again, people aren't listening to what decentralization means. If we're trying to get away from the banking system, if we're trying to get away from the situation where Jerome Powell stands on stage and says ABC and can move prices of the world markets, we don't want that. We want that person to be gone so that we as a community can take care of the chain ourselves. That's how you get proper decentralization. That's how you stop price fluctuations. It's all these kinds of things. So anyway, dragging it on back, Shaitoshi said that at some point they will also step down or leave the project, and good. That's exactly how it should be. There should be no leader of any of these projects. It doesn't make any sense. It stops, pure, decentralization. I was wondering that the other day when we got news that Cardano is ripping and roaring with their decentralization and their constitution and all these other things. At some point, in order for Cardano to really see if it can float, Charles Hoskinson has to leave the project. You can't continuously have this guy in a castle controlling everything. But I don't think he's ever going to leave the project. I don't, and that goes for every other leader of every other project as well. So, yeah. This made popular news. I was quite surprised, but I think I'm underestimating the amount of people who are into Shiba Inu. It kind of, exists in the back of my head as a coin that was created, but I don't, anyway. Cool. That's the Shiba Inu news. It's funny to see this divergence, light divergence, from the constant Shiba Inu burn news to actually news for the coin now. And yeah, let's move on. In I guess it makes sense news, the US SEC has announced that they have filed a lawsuit against Ethereum software firm Consensys, alleging that the company, and I quote, acted as an unregistered broker of crypto asset securities through their MetaMask swap service, end quote. For those of you who missed it, Consensys. So there's a lot of issues. I'll try and give you the last three issues. The US SEC has claimed that every single cryptocurrency is a security. The second part is that the SEC has basically said that any type of derivative, any type of project on top of another coin that is offering some kind of a brokerage, money movement service in any sort of way is dealing in unregistered securities and needs to register with the SEC. We had news before that the SEC had filed claim, or basically was digging into every single cryptocurrency company within the Ethereum ecosystem specifically. We know they're doing it for all coins. However, in the last 4 months, we had news that the SEC claimed that Ethereum was a security, so and so, blah, 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 blah. All of that completely fell apart. And then we had news that a bunch of these companies were really annoyed with the SEC. So they said that they were going to file a lawsuit against the SEC. And I believe that Consensys was one of them. And now the turnaround is that the SEC is like, well, okay, if you are suing us, we're going to sue you. So Consensys is a company that came about in, I want to say 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. And they're basically, I don't even know what to call them. They're not like Blockstream, but they're more of a service on top of a service on top of a blockchain. The idea of MetaMask, especially when it was created years ago, a lot of that has nearly gone out the window. The original idea of MetaMask was to have a web browser extension for Ethereum, where instead of you having to open up a wallet or go to a crypto exchange or download something and do all these other crazy things directly from your web browser, you could use Ethereum. They began to add every single Ethereum other coin that's on top of it, all the other chains and yada yada, so you can deal in the entirety of the Ethereum ecosystem. They recently added staking to MetaMask, which the SEC does not care for. But the other part also is, this is why I said this is what it used to be. MetaMask in recent years, unless I'm mistaken, the news that we got is that they are partnering or working with a MasterCard and Visa for people to be able to buy Ether with their card through MetaMask. And they also partnered with PayPal as well. The issue, for those of you who are wondering, because I'm sure I heard someone say, well, what's the problem? The idea of crypto is to leave the old system. When you integrate all of these things, you intertwine us into the old system and make it nearly impossible for people to leave the system that continuously crashes, that is used to having inflation and hyperinflation ruin the entire world. We intermingle with them. The other part is that these are meant to be, and I say it this way, depending on where you live in the world, these are meant to be your transactions. The problem is when you integrate with PayPal and Visa and MasterCard, they then have a transaction history of everything that you've done on these chains. Every transaction, every place you put your money, where your money is stored, they will know where you have it. If it's on a ledger, because they can see the transaction history of everything that you've done. You are once again giving your data to these companies the same exact way that we tried to get away from it and tried to have a decentralized system. But once again, I assume as a company, Consensys probably had gigantic Ethereum signs in their eyes, and they were like, we can make a lot of money by integrating these things, partnering with them and making fees on the side. It's because of all these hyper integrations that the US SEC is now calling them an unregistered broker. Because if you have and are giving access to people in the United States to all of these things, you can also swap your coins within MetaMask from any coin to another. Well, there you go. Of course, you're going to incur the wrath of Gary Gensler and all of his minions. They said since January 2023, Consensys has engaged in the unregistered offer and sales of securities in the form of crypto asset staking programs, and acted as an unregistered broker through its MetaMask staking service. By its conduct as an unregistered broker, Consensys has collected over $250 million in fees. It's always about money. So, of course, Consensys made money from it. Cool. No need. I mean, unless you want me to continue. No, I probably not. Like you get the generalized idea. The SEC is not too happy. And all these other things. Sure. Cool. Why not? I still believe that all of this is, so for those of you who don't know my theory, I still think that Gary Gensler is a Bitcoin maximalist. You can believe me or not, there's something definitely there. The other part of this is money, but like money. I think a lot of this doesn't have to do with securities laws so much as BlackRock and Fidelity and all these other companies are trying to create these things themselves. Remember how we had news maybe about a year at this point, where we had news that Visa is trying to also make their own Ethereum-based platform. And one of the dumbest news stories that we've ever received. Visa basically, if you want to send transactions or send Ether, they want you to take your Ether and send it to a Visa website, whatever website they might be developing. And then from there, the Visa would send it to a third party who would then send it to a fourth party who would then, for, counterparty risk and yada, 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 yada. And then they would send it to the person who you're trying to send it to. So everyone's trying to develop these platforms themselves. When you have a company named Consensys who's been doing it for the better half of 6 or 7 years without any major hiccups, of course, I'm telling you, it all has to do with money. None of this has to do with actually like protecting consumers or people within the U.S. from securities. It's all a load of, I believe, it's all a load of nonsense, because we would have actual cryptocurrency regulation in the United States already, but I don't think that that's ever going to happen at this point. So yeah, the SEC is suing Consensys, and that's just what they do because they have, imagine all that time spent actually making proper laws. Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. You'd rather sue someone. That's the SEC versus Consensys news. And yeah. Let's move on. Also in, people found this news really cool, and Sony is apparently getting into crypto. The $100 billion Japanese conglomerate is rebranding a local crypto exchange into their own image. According to a statement, Sony has acquired something called Whalefin. That's a terrible name. Whalefin, and has rebranded it as S-Blocks, an even worser name. S-Blocks, like literally S.blocks. Blocks? Why would you do that? The platform will collaborate with other businesses under Sony's umbrella to generate value for its crypto trading services. The move follows Sony's acquisition of Singapore-based market maker Amber in August of last year. The acquisition went through via... Why are there no normal names? The acquisition went through Kveta Web Co. Limited, a wholly owned subsidiary of Sony Group Corporation. Meanwhile, Whalefin, previously called Decurrent? What? Who's naming these things? S-Blocks, Whalefin, Decurrent, Kveta Web Co. Was initially acquired by Amber Group's Japanese subsidiary in 2022 and renamed Whalefin. Okay, that's enough. So a lot of people were excited about this because people love running up to rich people and rich companies and kissing their rings and kissing their toes and talking about how amazing and awesome they are. And this, this search for prices rising. The only way we can get prices to rise is by kissing up to the rich people who keep destroying our markets. This is what I assume that it is, at least. The reason why it's not that it's not amazingly awesome, cool, fantastic news, but also we've seen this a number of times before within the cryptocurrency space, and I mean like a dozen number of times. Back in 2018, around 9 major companies announced that they were going to be doing the exact same thing, and none of their crypto exchanges ever ended up actually taking off. The problem is that they smell money in the water, and they start dipping their toes into it, thinking that they can also accumulate some of this money that's floating around as well. The problem is that we don't need any new extra cryptocurrency exchanges. Like at the moment, we're totally fine. But believe it or not, it's the same exact thing with stable coins. We don't need 85,000 other stable coins. It's completely pointless. It's just a new level of greed from these companies who are trying to get into the space. The other issue is that if they end up actually launching these platforms, some of them, I mean, we've seen before in the past, some of them have like a daily trading volume of like $100,000, not $100 million, not $1 billion, like $100,000, because it becomes so niche that barely anyone is actually using it. It's the same exact thing with the New York Stock Exchange wanting to launch their own platform and launching Bakkt and launching all these other things, and no one wanted to use them. We're seeing a mad dash of all these companies getting into the space, but not really getting into the space. We have no news of them buying, which they're probably doing behind the scenes, and or accumulating portions of ETFs and whatnot. But it's just Sony. everyone gets so excited anytime like any big name. I mean, I saw this all over Twitter. Everyone's talking about it as if like this is it. Sony's gonna do it, and it's like no. Even if the New York Stock Exchange, like we live in a very specific kind of space and very like specific kind of market. But once again, I think I chalk this up to the brand new people who are in the space, who hear big name and they go, okay, big name, big money, big movement in the market. And that's not how things actually work. So that's and this isn't even really Sony. People were talking about Sony is launching their own crypto exchange. There's like 18 other names there. You got S-Block, you got ABC, you got Umbrella, you got it's just a lot. So cool. We'll see if anything happens with this. It probably won't. And also, I think this is happening in Japan. So unless you're in Japan, there's also other crypto exchanges there. There's like 3 or 4 like very well-known ones. And then that one, what's that one with the golden woman and all the advertisements? I can't remember the name. Like their main advertisement is like a woman who's like in gold. The background is gold. And then in front of her, the word Bitcoin is there. It's like, I don't know. Cool. That's Sony is doing something with themselves. Okie dokie. Let's move on. Also in incredibly popular news. There we go. Metaplanet. Metaplanet, a publicly traded company listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. And it says often compared to MicroStrategy. I'll give you that in 1 second. Has acquired an additional 20 Bitcoin, valued at approximately 1.2 million US dollars. The company shared in a recent post. Yes, there's a company called Metaplanet in Japan that people for some reason are like drooling over, and So for those of you who haven't seen, the Japanese yen has not been doing well over the course of the last like 2 years or so. They had a relatively robust and stable economy in 2020, 2021. At some point that all began to falter, and the yen has begun to lose a lot of value. You can even find like reports online. A lot of people are going on trips, going on holidays to Japan recently because of the hyper weekend yen. We heard from Metaplanet a couple of months ago who announced that they didn't care for the devaluation of their home currency, and therefore they would begin to start to buy up Bitcoin. A lot of people began to compare them to MicroStrategy because people need to compare other things to. I don't really know how to explain that. Like, you know, like it's totally okay that Metaplanet is their own company. A lot of people keep calling them the MicroStrategy of Asia, which I find incredibly cringe, because if it was the other way around, you would not be calling MicroStrategy the Metaplanet of America. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, we have other companies in this space who are always buying Bitcoin, and they don't have to be compared to MicroStrategy because they're their own company. So Metaplanet has recently purchased another 20 BTC. They currently have 161 Bitcoin that they've added to their portfolio, which I guess is cool and fantastic. I hope that this actually does something to people within Japan so that they're also accumulating, and that we don't just have another situation where a company called Metaplanet ends up owning tens of thousands of Bitcoin. But cool. This news always ends up being incredibly popular for some reason. Everyone loves Metaplanet. I'm not sure if it's maybe the name. I don't even, what do they do? I had like that's an actual real question. I keep hearing like company names and I'm like, I don't know. Are you a metaverse? Are you a planet? Like what exactly, so cool. Fantastic. Yeah, a lot of companies continue to buy. That should come as almost no surprise and or zero surprise to any of you out there, because one of the main things that we continuously go over on this channel is that even if you hear that you're supposed to panic, or if you see that the market has gone down, or you hear that someone has sold a lot of Bitcoin, those coins get accumulated every single day. And the companies that we're hearing about, like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, you know, they're like they only give us this information because they're usually public companies and it has to go like on their actual thing. You know that there are thousands of other companies around the world who are also accumulating Bitcoin. We just don't hear about it. So it doesn't end up making like the super flashy, amazing news. But no, these companies have been buying Bitcoin for years. That's why there's not a lot left. So yeah, regardless of what the day is, people are buying, companies are buying, institutions are buying as well. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for this video. I do sincerely hope that you have all enjoyed. I do hope you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever the heck you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.